Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about making your Skyrim much more difficult using only around 12 or so mods. These mods will make the enemies in Skyrim smarter, tougher and more plentiful, and you'll often be facing a situation where you'll have to think twice before entering a bandit camp or a den full of monsters. With these mods you will need to carefully plan your next adventure or risk death. So let's take a look at them. The first mod on the list is hand-placed enemies. This mod is all about increasing the number of enemies you encounter, which obviously makes the game more difficult, especially when coupled with the other difficulty mods on the list. The mod adds a total of 1500 enemies to many different locations across Skyrim. It populates not only bandit camps but also other locations such as bear dens and draugr tombs. The enemies are, as the name of the mod says, hand-placed, and the author made sure that the placement of enemies makes sense from an immersion standpoint. So, archers for example will be placed on high ground, while heavier melee enemies are placed close to doors. It also adds ambushes to some locations, causing a group of enemies to spawn some distance behind you whenever you reach a certain point in the dungeon. And the placement of the ambushes actually makes sense, as the enemies won't just appear in front of you like in other mods. Hand-placed enemies is by far the best mod of its category, outmatching older mods that try to achieve the same thing. If you use other enemy population mods, I strongly recommend you try this one instead. The second mod that I use is Blade and Blunt. This mod is my combat overhaul of choice, and it has different features such as making enemy AI smarter, adding an injury system, a resource management system, attacks of opportunity, improving the stagger mechanics, and also changes some values such as resistance caps, the armor rating formula and damage taken by the player. I've tried different combat overhauls across my time playing Skyrim, and I found Blade and Blunt to suit vanilla combat best. But if you use MCO, you might want to look at other combat overhauls. You could also add the mod Modern Combat AI on top of Blade and Blunt. Even though Blade and Blunt already changes enemy AI and makes it smarter, Modern Combat AI further improves on it, making enemies quite aggressive. So if you hate it when enemies are blocking all the time and are never attacking, this mod will definitely help with that. The next mod is Know Your Enemy 2 and its Armors add-on. Know Your Enemy gives the creatures of Skyrim different resistances and weaknesses based on damage type. So for example, a bow won't do much against draugr, but bring an axe to the fight and you'll be able to cut through them just as easily as before. Some beasts such as bears are hard to kill with frost damage, and if for example you're facing a ghost, you better make sure you've brought some silver weapons. The armor add-on does a similar thing but for humans wearing armor. Each armor type will now grant different resistances and weaknesses, so for example daggers and bows are much less useful against heavily armored opponents, while light armor gives some resistance against blunt weapons. These two mods are well balanced but will definitely make the game more difficult. They're great because they make it harder for you to stick to only one method of killing, and will force you to plan ahead and bring appropriate equipment before going on an adventure. If you use both Know Your Enemies 2 and the Armor add-on, make sure to also grab the integration patch that is provided by the author. Another great mod to add to the mix is NPCs use potions. Have you ever thought it's unfair that you can use a practically unlimited number of potions but enemy bandits don't have any? Well, this mod changes that. Human enemies will now often spawn with a potion or two and use them during the fight. NPCs will be able to spawn with and use any kind of potion, be it an invisibility potion or a healing potion, and can even poison their weapons. I strongly recommend pairing this mod with Ultimate Animated Potions NG, which adds animations for potion drinking, so you won't be able to chug 100 potions in 1 second anymore. The Animated Potions mod works both for the player and NPCs, which pairs amazingly well with NPCs use potions, and it also works in first person. Now, which mod have we missed? Well, a Bandit Overhaul of course. The mods Lawless and Madman are two mods made by the same author and overhaul bandits and Forsworn respectively. The main features of these mods is increasing the level cap so that regular bandits for example can now scale up to 50. The mods will also distribute proper perks to the affected NPCs, and the bandits and the Forsworn are divided into archetypes, so you can encounter a bandit berserker for example, who is dual wielding and has a very aggressive AI, or a bandit spellsword which is a melee and magic hybrid. And as for the Forsworn archetypes, we have for example a Forsworn skin changer who can turn into a werewolf, or spirit callers who are archers that can also summon animal familiars. These two mods also add some equipment variety to the bandits and Forsworn, and of course their visual appearance is diversified as well. These mods will make your bandits and Forsworn not only a little more difficult, but also very interesting and diverse, so I highly recommend them. So with that, I have listed the main difficulty mods. These will be more than enough to make combat harder, but here are a couple of bonus mods. First, we have NPCs take cover. This mod aims to address the cheese strategy when a player can climb on a rock or some other object that NPCs can't reach and shoot the NPCs with a bow. This mod makes the NPCs in these situations now run away from the player and seek cover instead of just waiting to be killed by the player. In fact, it affects not only humans but also other creatures. The mod also adds over 200 voice lines, making the NPCs complain about you trying to use such tactics against them. Another mod that will contribute to the difficulty of the game is Skyrim Souls. This mod will unpause all the menus in your game, similar to how it is in Souls-like games, meaning you now won't have the time to rummage through your inventory to find a specific potion if you're in the middle of combat. And the same goes for stuff like looting enemies during combat, or even pickpocketing moving targets or lockpicking doors. All of these actions will be harder with unpaused menus. The last mod on the list is Sunel, which is a survival mod and therefore doesn't really have to do a lot with combat, but it still does make your game more difficult, but in a different way. The mod adds needs for drinking, eating and sleeping, and optionally there is also a cold module, which means that cold areas become dangerous and you'll need to find a way to keep yourself warm. Mostly it's quite easy to satisfy these needs, but you might actually run into some trouble in the northern areas of Skyrim if you have the cold module. And if you can't keep yourself warm, it might not be a good idea to fight enemies, since it's much harder to do while you're freezing. The real difficulty of the mods, however, comes from its adjustments to carry weight. See, your carry weight is actually halved now, and some items such as arrows and lockpicks actually have some weight, and fast travel is also disabled. These tweaks make it a bit harder for you to make money, as now you won't be able to carry as many items due to both the carry weight being halved and items such as food, water and arrows taking up space that they wouldn't before. Disabling fast travel also means that you will now have to pay for horses and carriage services. And of course all of these tweaks are optional and can be disabled in the MCM menu, but if you do use them, I highly recommend getting the mods Carriage and Ferry Travel Overhaul to improve the carriage system in Skyrim, and the mod Candlehearth to overhaul in rental prices. With that being said, we've now reached the end of the video, and as you can see, it doesn't really take a ton of mods to increase the difficulty of the game. I urge you to install all of the mods listed above and try them out if you don't want your game to be too easy. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one.